Ethan Rowe had learned to live quietly. The neutral space station Haven Arc was not a place where humans were meant to draw attention. It floated between three major star empires, a metal city full of rules, cameras, and silent judgments. Humans were still new to this part of the galaxy. They were respected for their intelligence and adaptability, but also watched closely. One mistake could become a reason to push them out, so Ethan followed the rules. He woke early. He worked late. He spoke politely. He avoided conflict. His small living quarters were clean, simple, and carefully organized. A narrow bed fixed to the wall, a desk filled with data pads, a tiny kitchen unit with a fridge that hummed softly at all hours. Nothing extra, nothing flashy. That was why the missing food bothered him so much. At first, it was small things. A nutrition bar gone, half a fruit pack missing. A sealed protein meal opened when he was sure he had not touched it. Ethan blamed himself. Space work was exhausting. Long meetings with alien diplomats, constant translation delays, strange gravity shifts. It messed with memory. He told himself he must have eaten the food and forgotten. But the pattern continued. Every few days, something vanished, never the expensive items. Never the fresh supplies delivered directly from Earth. Only leftovers, older packs, meals close to their expiration date. Ethan began to feel uneasy. He checked the fridge logs. Haven Arc appliances tracked everything. Time stamps showed the fridge opening while he was away during his scheduled work hours. Someone else was accessing his food. The station allowed only one person into his private quarters besides security, his maid. Her name was Lyra. Lyra was assigned to him by station services. She belonged to a small, fragile alien species called the Velathi. Barely taller than a human child, she had pale blue skin and large, dark eyes that reflected light like glass. Her movements were quiet, almost nervous. She spoke little, always keeping her head slightly lowered. Ethan had never seen her eat. She came 3 times a week, cleaned, organized, left without a sound. He had always treated her kindly. He greeted her, thanked her, paid attention when she spoke, which was rare. Most beings on the station barely noticed workers like her. Now suspicion crept into his thoughts, slow and heavy. He did not want to believe it. Accusing a station worker, especially one from a low-ranked species, could destroy lives. If he reported her and was wrong, the consequences would be severe. If he was right, the station would punish her harshly. Ethan found himself stuck between rules and conscience, so he decided to watch. The next time Lyra arrived, Ethan acted normal. He greeted her, left for work, and followed his usual routine. But instead of going to the council chambers, he turned back through a maintenance corridor. He knew the station well. Humans learned fast. He returned to his quarters quietly and stood outside the door, heart beating faster than he liked to admit. Minutes passed. Then the door opened. Lyra stepped inside. Through the narrow observation panel, Ethan watched. She cleaned carefully, wiping surfaces, organizing his desk, folding a blanket he had left loose. Her movements were gentle, respectful. She avoided touching personal items unless necessary. Then she paused. Slowly, she walked toward the fridge. She looked around first. Ethan held his breath. Her hands trembled as she opened the fridge door. She did not rush. She scanned the shelves, eyes lingering on fresh meals before moving away from them. Instead, she reached for the back, selecting 2 small leftover packs. She hesitated. Then she placed them inside a thin cloth pouch hidden beneath her uniform. Before closing the fridge, she stopped. Her gaze lifted to a small photo frame on the shelf above. It was a picture from Earth. Ethan with his parents and younger sister taken years ago. They stood together in sunlight, arms around each other, smiling. Lyra stared at the image. Her shoulders shook. Ethan saw something wet slide down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, closed the fridge, and left the room exactly as she found it. Ethan stood frozen. He did not feel angry. He felt ashamed. That night he could not sleep. The image of her shaking hands and quiet tears haunted him. This was not theft driven by greed. This was survival, or something close to it, but assumptions were dangerous. The next day, Ethan prepared. He adjusted his schedule. He left food in the fridge deliberately, extra leftovers, clearly marked as near expired. Then, instead of spying, he waited inside. When Lyra arrived, she looked surprised to see him home. "I changed my schedule," Ethan said calmly. "Please continue." She nodded and worked silently. When she reached the fridge, Ethan spoke. "Lyra," she froze, her hands tightened at her sides. Slowly, she turned to face him. "Yes, sir." Her voice was soft, careful. "I know food has been missing," he said gently. "I know it was you." Her eyes widened. She dropped to her knees instantly. "I am sorry," she said quickly. "Please do not report me. Please, I will accept any punishment. I will never do it again." Ethan felt his chest tight. "Stand up," he said, "please." She hesitated, then slowly rose, still shaking. "I am not here to punish you," he said. "I just want to understand." Silence filled the room. Lyra looked at the floor, her fingers twisted together. "I did not take from need of comfort," she said finally. "Only what would be thrown away." "Why?" Ethan asked. Her voice broke. "My siblings," she whispered. "They are not registered workers. They hide in the lower levels. The rations given to Velathi workers are insufficient. The young ones grow weak." Ethan said nothing. "The Station Nutrition Council classifies our species as low-energy life forms," she continued. "They believe we require less. They are wrong." She looked up at him, eyes filled with fear. "I did not want to steal from a human," she said. "Humans are kind," you smile. "You say thank you, I did not want to betray that." Ethan felt speechless, all the rules, all the policies, and beneath them quiet suffering hidden in plain sight. "How many?" he asked. "3," she replied. "They are very small." Ethan walked to the fridge and opened it. He took out several meal packs, fresh ones. "These are yours," he said, her eyes widened in shock. "I cannot." "You can," he said firmly, "and you will." She hesitated, then slowly accepted them, holding them like something fragile and precious. Ethan looked at the empty space in his fridge and felt something change inside him. This was not a small problem, and he knew with absolute certainty that he could no longer stay quiet. The galaxy had rules, but humans had limits to what they would ignore. And Ethan Rowe had just reached his. Ethan did not sleep much that night. The room felt different after Lyra left, as if the walls themselves now carried weight. He sat at his desk, staring at the dark screen, replaying her words again and again. Low-energy life forms. Insufficient rations. Children hiding in lower levels. The station called that efficiency. Humans called it cruelty. The next morning, Ethan went to work as usual, but his mind was no longer focused on treaties or trade numbers. He watched the aliens around him differently now. Tall armored species moved with confidence. Wealthy delegates laughed loudly in open halls. Service workers stayed close to walls, eyes lowered, voices quiet. He began to notice patterns he had ignored before. At lunch, Ethan visited the public nutrition hall instead of his private quarters. The food quality changed depending on species rank. Humans were given decent meals. Core species received rich, complex nutrition. Labor species stood in separate lines, accepting thin, gray packs without complaint. Ethan watched Lyra from a distance. She stood patiently, receiving her ration. The worker at the counter barely looked at her. She bowed slightly in thanks and walked away. Ethan followed. She did not notice him as she slipped through a maintenance door and down into the lower decks. These areas were not forbidden, but they were forgotten. Lights flickered. The air smelled recycled and stale. He stopped at a corner and waited. Minutes later, small shapes emerged from behind a panel. 3 Velathi children. They were thinner than Lyra, their limbs fragile, their eyes too large for their faces. When they saw her, they rushed forward quietly, clinging to her arms and sides. Lyra smiled. It was the first real smile Ethan had ever seen on her face. She knelt and opened her pouch, dividing the food carefully, making sure each child received the same amount. They ate slowly, savoring every bite. Ethan felt something tighten in his throat. This was not hidden crime. This was a family surviving in the cracks of a system that did not care. That evening, Ethan made a decision. He began researching station law. Haven Arc had thousands of regulations, written over centuries by non-human powers. Humans had helped update some of them recently, adding clarity and structure. Ethan knew human legal thinking was different. Where others valued hierarchy, humans valued definitions. He searched for loopholes. He found one: human cultural property laws. Under recent agreements, humans were allowed to maintain cultural food practices for mental health and morale. Food classified as cultural exchange material could be shared freely with invited guests, without ration limits. The station had never expected anyone to use that rule seriously. Ethan filed the paperwork that same night. The next delivery to his quarters doubled. When Lyra arrived 2 days later, she froze at the sight of the full fridge. "This is a mistake," she said softly. "No," Ethan replied, "it's paperwork." He explained slowly, using simple words. He showed her the authorization. Her hands shook as she read the screen. "You are risking trouble," she said. "So are you," he answered. "The difference is I have protection." She looked at him, something new in her expression, not fear, trust. Word spread quickly among the Velathi, not loudly, not openly, but in whispers, shared glances, careful movements. Small hands knocked on Ethan's door at odd hours. Food disappeared from his fridge faster than before, but this time it was intentional. Ethan adjusted. He learned what they needed. He labeled containers clearly. He left notes written in basic trade language. Eat slowly. For the first time since arriving on Haven Ark, Ethan felt like his presence mattered. But systems do not like disruption. Within weeks, station services noticed unusual food flow. Reports flagged abnormal consumption patterns in human quarters. A notice arrived in Ethan's inbox requesting explanation. He attended the meeting calmly. The council chamber was large, circular, and cold. Representatives of 12 species hovered, sat, or stood according to their biology. At the center, a projection displayed Ethan's file. "You are exceeding standard nutritional limits," said a tall insectoid delegate. "Within my rights," Ethan replied. "Your food is being redistributed," another voice said. "This violates labor balance." "No," Ethan said. "It corrects it." Murmurs rippled across the chamber. "Velathi rations are calculated precisely," the delegate continued. "Your actions disrupt station efficiency." Ethan activated his display. Medical data appeared, growth charts, energy loss curves, mortality projections. "These are Velathi children," Ethan said. "They are underfed. Your calculations are wrong." The chamber fell silent. "You classify them as low-energy life forms," Ethan continued. "But you never updated your data. Humans have. We share food. We observe growth. We adapt." "You are emotionally compromised," a delegate said. "Yes," Ethan replied, "and factually correct." The meeting ended without resolution. That night, station security increased patrols in lower decks. Velathi children began disappearing, not arrested, relocated. Ethan found Lyra crying in his quarters. "They took them," she said. "They say it is for safety." Ethan stood very still. "Where?" he asked. "They will not say." He made another decision. He contacted Earth. Human networks responded faster than the station expected. Engineers shared logs, medics sent reports. Soldiers remembered similar patterns from frontier worlds. Humans did not shout. They documented. Within days, Haven Ark's data feeds filled with human inquiries. Trade partners requested clarification. Media nodes asked questions, lots of questions. The station council grew uneasy. Ethan was summoned again. This time, humans were watching. "Return the children," Ethan said calmly. "Restore rations, update classifications." "You overstep," a delegate warned. Ethan leaned forward. "No," he said, "you underestimated." He presented one final file. Human trade withdrawal projections, medical embargo risks, labor strike probabilities. The room went quiet. Haven Ark depended on humans more than it admitted. The children were returned the next day. Lyra brought them to Ethan's quarters, unsure, afraid it might be temporary. Ethan knelt to their level. "You are safe," he said. "No one will take you again." The smallest one touched his sleeve. "Human, why help?" the child asked. Ethan searched for an answer simple enough. "Because you were hungry," he said. Lyra watched him with tears in her eyes. For the first time, she did not bow. She stood straight. And across Haven Ark, something began to shift, not loudly, not suddenly, but enough that the galaxy started to notice. Part 3 will complete the story whenever you say. The station did not return to normal after that. Haven Ark continued to function, ships still arrived and departed, deals were still signed, but something invisible had cracked. The system had been challenged, not with weapons, not with threats, but with attention. And attention, once focused, was hard to remove. Ethan felt it everywhere he went. Security drones paused longer when he passed. Council aides watched him with careful eyes. Some aliens avoided him, others studied him with new interest. Humans greeted him quietly, nodding in understanding. Lyra and the children stayed close to his quarters now, not inside all the time, but near enough to feel safe. The station had allowed them temporary status, labeling them as dependents under human cultural protection. It was a fragile title, easy to remove. Ethan knew the council would not forget, so he did not slow down. He met with human medics and began collecting health data on Velathi workers. He spoke to engineers who maintained lower decks. He listened to stories that had never been recorded because no one had thought them important. workers collapsing during long shifts, children hiding during inspections, food ration packs diluted to save costs. None of it was dramatic alone. Together, it was undeniable. Lyra helped him, translating quietly, guiding him through areas no official ever visited. At first, she apologized for everything, for every request, every question. Over time, she stopped apologizing. One evening, as Ethan organized files, Lyra stood near the door, watching him. "You are tired," she said. "So are you," he replied. She hesitated. "You do not have to do this anymore. The children are safe for now." "For now," Ethan repeated. "That's the problem." She lowered her gaze. "If the council becomes angry, they already are," he said calmly. "Anger isn't the danger, silence is." The next council session was larger than usual. Not officially, but observers filled the outer chambers. Media nodes hovered. Trade delegates listened carefully, even when pretending not to. The chair, being an ancient floating species that rarely spoke, addressed Ethan directly. "You have created imbalance," it said. Ethan stood alone in the center. "No," he replied, "I revealed one." "Labor species are maintained at survival level," the chair being continued. "This is efficient. For machines," Ethan said, "not for people." "Velathi are not people by our definition." Ethan did not raise his voice. "That definition is outdated." He activated the display. Images appeared. Velathi workers laughing softly while eating together. Children drawing with borrowed tools. Health scans showing improvement after weeks of proper nutrition. "They learn, they care, they form families, they suffer when ignored," Ethan said. "If that does not meet your definition of people, then your definition is broken." A murmur spread. Another delegate spoke. "You speak from emotion." "Yes," Ethan said, "and evidence." The chair being was silent for a long time. Finally, it spoke again. "Your species reacts strongly to perceived injustice." Ethan nodded. "We always have. What will you do if we refuse to change?" Ethan did not threaten. He simply answered, "Humans will stop pretending this place is neutral." That landed harder than any threat. The station lived on balance. Neutrality was its shield. Lose human trust and that shield cracked. Days passed. Negotiations dragged on. Then something unexpected happened. Other labor species began to speak. Not loudly, not all at once, but one by one. Testimonies appeared, records were leaked. Quiet suffering found words. The council realized too late that this was bigger than Velathi rations. This was about how power treated those without it. Faced with pressure from humans, allies, and now internal unrest, the station made a decision. Labor classifications were revised. Rations increased. Dependent status formalized. Medical access expanded, not out of kindness. Out of necessity, the announcement spread across Haven Arc. Lyra heard it first from a public terminal. She stood frozen, reading the text again and again. When she finally understood, her knees gave out. Ethan caught her before she fell. "It's real," he said softly. The children laughed without knowing why. Life did not become perfect, but it became possible. Velathi workers began standing straighter. Children walked openly in corridors. Other species watched humans differently now, not as newcomers, but as disruptors of old habits. Ethan was reassigned soon after, not as punishment, as distance. He was offered a new post far from Haven Arc, a promotion officially, a removal quietly. On his last day, Lyra came early. She cleaned slowly, carefully, as she always had. When she finished, she stood in the center of the room, unsure what to do. "You don't have to come today," Ethan said. "I wanted to," she replied. She reached into her pouch and pulled out a small object, a folded cloth stitched with simple patterns. "For you," she said. "From us," Ethan accepted it gently. "Thank you," he said. She hesitated, then spoke words she had practiced. "You changed our lives," she said, "not because you were strong, but because you noticed." Ethan smiled faintly. "That's something humans are good at." When his ship departed, the station looked the same from the outside. Inside, it was not. Stories spread beyond Haven Arc. Other stations reviewed policies, not all changed, but none could say they did not know. And somewhere in the vast, watching galaxy, a simple lesson took root. Humans did not conquer with force. They conquered with care. They saw the ones everyone else ignored, and once they saw them, they refused to look away. The fridge in Ethan's new quarters was always full. But he never forgot the first time it was empty, and why.